Um, Thrilled to be here and being part of this session. And I want to quickly go over with the limited time we have about what are the things that you need to keep in mind as a student applying to Cosmos in terms of your essays. So let me just open my screen to share. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So personal essay strategies, right? If you remember Harpal's slide from before, it is like, they look at your GPA and how well you meet your prerequisites and, the big components that get into, evaluating you. But one of the biggest components that is always in the control, in your hands are your essays. How you project what you have, how you project who you are, how you project your interest in the area, right? So do not write it last minute and wing it. Think through, and that's where, as a essay coach or a counselor, and the value proposition from, success coaching comes, where we teach them how to write about yourself, whether it's a personal essay or a cluster essay. So Cosmos asks for one personal essay with 300-word limit. And the question is, beyond what you've already shared, what do you believe stands out and as a strong candidate about you for Cosmos? And they ask you to weave that story by highlighting a skill, talent, challenge, or opportunity that helps them to get to know you better. So think it's one thing. So don't put your resume there saying these are everything I did and because of which I'm a good candidate, right? And this event can come from your life story, a challenge you faced, or a situation. It doesn't have to be a life-altering challenge. It can be an event, something at a club, or something from a personal experience or an activity that you do. But somewhere where things were not happening well, or there was a hurdle, and you went there and changed the situation there, and how you went about doing it, and what was the impact you achieved, but most importantly, what was the outcome or learning lesson from this experience through which you're showcasing the type of person you are, the integrity you have, a character shade that you want to share, grit, determination, activity, like, what made you do that? And through that, how are you projecting yourself, right? So think about three things you need to know as a writer. First, you need to know your audience. These are going to be your experts, professors who are going to be sitting in the panel and looking at who you are. Know your intention. What is it you want to tell about yourself? And say it in a very engaging, authentic, short story, right? Like that showcases your strengths and lessons learned. Finally, know yourself to project yourself better, right? And I'm not going to go into the details of the examples, but I'm going to quickly give a run through. You will have access to the deck of slides. So situation, task, action, results, star, right? Like, as I said, situation and challenge. And you have to allude to them. Start with the situation or challenge. Tell them why this has to be solved, right? Like you're raising the stakes by giving the importance why this has to be solved, right? That starts the flow of the essay. And then you get into the action mode and show us, do not tell us, oh, this challenge was so bad and I automatically went there and saved the day. Tell me from small steps to big steps, what are the things you did to get it better, right? And eventually give me the results. If you achieved something, sometimes it's not quantitative, but you change the map of the situation and made it better for yourself and others, right? Or in the process, you raised $2,000 for your drama club. Awesome. Put it there, right? But eventually, the biggest thing that you need to hit on, and in fact, I would say the single most important thing is to show the growth you've had or the maturity you've had and the perspectives or reflections and life lessons you have learned. For example, it could be a leadership essay and you realize like you were just giving orders left and right and people were not gelling together, and because of which the group was not working properly. And then you built the momentum by integrating people's perspectives, changed the way the leadership worked. And at this point, at the end of the story, you're saying, from this, I learned that to be an effective leader, you have to understand how to build team chemistry, how to boost people's confidence and strengths and bring them together. That made this whole experience enriching for me. Now, that tells the audience you strive to improve, you care to bring people together. These are qualities you can project, right? So as I said, these are examples how a robotics team failed. He went on, like there is a turning point where he realized something had to be done. and then a string of actions he took and life lessons he learned. So we have a few essays linked there, but because of time, I'm not going through everything, but it covers the points I had, right? Cluster essays. Cluster essays are what I call no messing around essays, right? Like they are meant to be with a purpose. Two cluster essays are required. Why did you choose your first choice cluster and the second choice cluster? 200 words each. So you get in there, you say what you need to say it very clearly without repetition, and drive home the point that you are best fit to study this cluster at Cosmos, right? So what does it entail? What intrigued you about this cluster in particular, right? So bring in a small anecdotal story of how your interest started, right? Maybe it started in class or from an academic club you were a part of, but give me one or two cherry-picked examples that show this interest and meaningfully weaves into your interest in the current cluster. And what have you done in the past that connects to the current cluster? How will you utilize the specific offerings of the current cluster? Don't just say, I'm interested in this cluster, right? You should tell them that you have researched this and 2, 3 aspects of the clusters appeal to you, can connect to your past or current work and something you want to do towards the future, right? So weave your story meaningfully, showing yourself in a powerful way that you're fit to take advantage of that cluster and learn more with it, learn more from it, and apply a little bit to the future if there is space. But do not just say, do not parrot their brochure, like back to them. Weave it into your story. And there is a very wonderful example. And again, do not just copy examples, take examples for what they are as with a pinch of salt, right? Like bring in your best story. For example, here, the student started about his previous work in plant biology, connected to the cluster in Cosmos, and what the specific offerings are in yellow, and how his previous work or current work is relating to it, and how he cannot wait to dig deep. With that, I think I have arrived at the end. But when you're writing these essays, I want you to take the time and think about, like I usually recommend putting an outline and being very clear and concise in what you want to talk about, what you're projecting, what you're connecting with in the past. Write an outline in bullet points and then relate to writing the actual draft. And please do not write your draft like a day or two before Cosmos is due, because I can guarantee that essay is not going anywhere. This is where I think SK proposition aspect comes into, because we have coaches and counselors who are point on in helping you tell your stories out, work it into an outline and draft it into a beautiful essay, go through draft iterations and get you to tell your best story, no matter what is the story you have. How best can you project and how can you connect with your audience who are waiting to form an impression about you? With that, I am done with the essays part of.
Thank you, Anu. Super insightful. Is there an example, Anu, that you can share in terms of one of the past students with regards to the outstanding essay? That would be nicer if you have a theme or a line that you could share, maybe.
Okay, I can share a personal essay and quickly run through a cluster essay as well. So the personal essay is a kid who went through, its robotics team failed miserably at a world championship. And the failure was so bad and the chemistry in the team was falling apart and they couldn't even stand being in the room together. Like, so if you see, I've color coded this essay. This is how I teach essay concepts to my students, right? Like talk 300-word essay, there is no room for long introduction. Get to the matter. What was the situation and what was the trouble? The turning point was we couldn't stand each other. Then something happened. He got to observe some other team's leadership. That became a turning point, and he's like, let me understand and investigate what went wrong and how could I fix it. What are the things I could do from simple steps to bigger steps? And this is where the green color coding comes, right? Like things he did to improve the team strategy, the chemistry, weave the people in, bring their best efforts forward, right? And then what happened, right? Actions taken and what was achieved. Their team became better and they got better at the competition. And then he learned the lessons that you have to somehow be curious and non-stop, like showing tenacity, adaptability, and resilience to understand what went wrong and sincerely try to improve it for the betterment of yourself and others. Now, that is a very insightful, powerful essay where he took something from ground level to somewhere really good And through that time has passed, and he's able to stand here. The person standing here is different from the person here. He's able to reflect upon and make, oh, these are the wonderful life lessons I learned, and that is just awesome. And through that, he showcases his strengths, right? Resilience and adaptability. Find your own strengths in your story. Did that answer your question, Kavita?
Yes, it does. Helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions? And I think already went through the cluster essay for plant biology. So
Yep, thank you. Now, audience, on to you guys. We have a few minutes here. Would love to answer your questions. So feel free to either put it in the chat or unmute yourself and ask your question. There is a question from Varsha. For essays, would it be okay to cut and paste answers from the past essays submitted to UC for some other programs?
cut and paste a previous essay to UC, I would also always say treat every summer program specific prompt and essay as a new attempt. The story could be the same, but make sure you're answering the prompt. For example, another prompt would say, what were some of the experiences that made you better? Or this would be different. So I would say tailor, make it, take the story, but effectively alter it to cater to what Cosmos would want to see. If you read through their, for example, Harpal showed this, right? Like these are the things they're looking for. So make sure you mold the story and shape it in a way that caters to this particular prompt for Cosmos.
Another question here. What are the frequently used categories for essays? Here it shows challenge. So are you seeking for the theme or a category, Aryan?
So as I pull this slide, it can come from anywhere. You doesn't like necessarily, you do not have to have the hardest challenge, but sometimes challenges or even what I call situations, right? They speak louder about the person you are becoming when you go through the process and make things happen, right? But it can come from experiences, activities that you do, which you showed grit and determination to get it from some level to a supreme level. And through that, you're showcasing your ability to deep dive into things and make things happen, right? So it can come from anywhere as long as you're showing your strengths and what happened. For example, one of the essays is um, not about a challenge, but this person loves building, very creative person, right? But they did small scale projects which they are familiar with because they never wanted to cross that limit and go into unfamiliar things, right? Like that was a personal hindrance, but then they wanted to build a chandelier, right? Like so there was a complicated process and she was freaked out. But then slowly, step by step, she was like modeling little failures, bigger failures, again, start from ground zero, build it up, right? Like non-stop being at it. And then she built one of the magnificent projects for her home, which is a handmade chandelier. And through that, like she faced her fears, right? The same thing took her from AP biology. In fact, she's able to apply that lessons elsewhere. AP biology was challenging for her, but she applied herself, did very well, and eventually learned that you don't just stop trying things, you try things that are not familiar and make the best contribution that you're capable of.
Thank you. And there's a question about US ACO Gold. How does that look in the application if one wants to do the intro to AML at Davis?
Yeah, I responded to that already. Maybe it's maybe an overqualification. Don't overstretch it, because an intro course to ML, they will want to know why you want to come and do this here. So there's a way to explain it. Happy to discuss offline. Anu, how much of your content is still there? I mean, have you gone through the cluster essays? Because those are very critical, and I'd rather have you.
Yes, I did go through my cluster essay, but I wanted to draw a brief, pointer to it. So the cluster essays, as I said before, are, be very specific to the cluster that you're choosing and showcasing why this cluster, right? So you would have done a bunch of things. For example, this student had done many things in plant biology, but he cherry picked one or two things, and you start right away from saying what is it you were done. And I would make a personal suggestion: when you're writing about a particular cluster, it is important to say what the cluster is, right? You cannot just say this cluster interests me, right? Like name the cluster and say why it interests you, where your interest stems from, right? Like that's where he has this particular story where he had investigated plant research before, and say some of the questions were unanswered. So studying this at Cosmos is the most meaningful thing, right? Like, but that way he's able to connect to what Cosmos is offering. And if you see the gold, the yellow ones, they are all relevant, specific things that this cluster is offering. And he's able to connect it to what he has done in the past, or the curiosity with which he is willing to learn in the future. And even a small Huntington, botanical garden trip, he's saying, hey, I cannot wait to go there and read, study what the plants are in their natural habitats and understand more, because I want to pursue this research further. So he's like, clearly on 200 words is not much room to play with, right? Like, so what am I interested in this? What is this cluster? What was my previous interest relating to it? What have I done before? What is it about this cluster that interests me so much? And what do I want to do with it? And how do I want to map it to my future connect?
Like I would actually even make this even shorter. Like there's still a lot of areas to make it shorter, but peeling the onion, every word, every sentence is showing something new. So if you're talking about who cares about the name of the professor, Bharat Podiar, I mean, at UCSC, when I did this work a year ago, I found this intriguing and I was lost. And I discussed this with my peers. Now you got the professor's attention. You're thinking the mindset of the adcom.
And I think the clusters to the matter for, they want to see academia, they know your 9th to 11th, no matter what research you do, it's not the research at the highest level, right? But the curiosity, the drive, the ability to double down on something and go to the depth of it, that infectious curiosity you bring is a big deal. So whichever way you brought it, like present it to them, right? And connect it to the cluster. And that's how your cluster essays flow.
Thank you, Anu. And there is a question here. Does Cosmos consider UC weighted or unweighted GPA?
You just want your transcript. They've just asked you, they've not asked for those details of GPA. I don't even think on the application they ask GPA. They just say send us your transcript and they'll calculate it for you. So UC GPA is the UC GPA, which is UC GPA is for college applications, but in this case, it's they will just look at what your grades are in the specific subjects that they're looking for. That's why one of the things UC San Diego people were saying were it's important for the specific subjects what your GPA is, not your overall GPA, which could come down because of English or PE. It's not as important to them.
That makes sense.
I have a question. Thanks for organizing this webcast. We do get some conflicting messages from our school counselor. She says that paid summer programs are not highly regarded by admission officers, and students should try to do, more. Like unpaid programs where the acceptance rate is very low, which means like the chances of getting in is very, very low, right? What do what are your thoughts about that? Because I know there are some unpaid programs, free programs, but they are like MIT, offered by MIT, and it's very competitive. I mean, it's probably like only 100 students are being accepted there.
So it's a spectrum. You have Lawrence Livermore Labs, Berkeley Labs. Many of them have free programs, but to your point, those are very competitive to get into. There's pay for play, there are a lot of institutions which will offer, oh, we'll get you a PhD student and you can do some research for 3 months, guided research, but it's not with the professor. It's fairly clear what's happening over there. Those are what they recommend, or when your counselor is talking about those pay for play, those are the programs which are being held at a commercial site, or they are just intro to engineering or some very basic, like let's give you an experience of what college life is. Those are what they consider for pay for play. But a program like Cosmos, any program run by the UCs or by a public university, is there's going to be a cost to it, because if they're going to make it residential, if they have to pay somebody for it, I don't think admissions officers care about, but pay for play program. They do care to know is what did you learn from it, where did you go? See, understand the mindset of the admissions officer who's reading your college application. They want to get you in. They're trying very hard to get you in. But if you're, for example, if you made it to MIT RSI, but you don't talk much about what you learned in the process, or how does it apply to your future aspirations, that application's not going to go very far, because it's not connecting to who you are. Versus if you did some academic research at a community college with a professor, but it connects to something more important in their life. Now that is a unpaid project. That's going to be the rub, right? So it's all about the story, how people like Anu and my entire team, how they connect the dots.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you so much.
If we can open up questions now, so everybody should, let's not share screens. Just ask us as many questions you have, and we're good. We can answer all questions now. So you can come on video, this is a community discussion, so I have the time and we can keep talking.
And Harpal, I have a direct message here from one of the students. A student has gotten B+ in each semester of 9th grade in PE and English. They're worried if that will act as a flag for their UC application.
Well, you'll only come to know after you apply. So you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So apply, see what happens, and in your teacher recommendation, tell the teacher to kind of highlight, saying, I realize he has a little lower grade in this thing. It's not reflective of him. That's it. Yeah, you'll be okay. That's fine. I mean, the very fact that as 9th grader you're applying is a big thing. Getting rejected at Cosmos is an achievement in itself, because you had the audacity to read 45 different clusters and learn what the world is going towards, and you chose 2 clusters and you stuck with it year over year. I can guarantee you, if this 9th grader applied 3 years in a row and got rejected 3 years in a row, he's headed to an amazing college anyways, because he had that mindset.
Harpal, if I can chime in on that, I would also always, when we talk, we always tell the students, like, think about your summer program applications, the drill that you go through with Cosmos as a mini version of what is waiting for you in 12th grade when you apply to your colleges, right? Like the ability to stick to timelines, write something, craft good essays, get the whole application assembled, your brag sheets, your recommendation. These are all revving up your system to go towards there. And it doesn't matter if it's not Cosmos, the skills you pick up can be applied to other programs too. And I think that's one more aspect where SK helps you with picking other programs which are on par with Cosmos, or based on your interests, and gets you somewhere moving and doing something to build your foundation for your academic profile.
Yeah, very, very well put, Anu. I think, it just sets as a base, right? Keeping the end outcome aside. I have a few direct questions here again. There is an 8th grader who is aspiring to apply for Cosmoses. So the question is, can they leverage 7th grade science teacher or a math teacher for the recommendation?
Yes.
The answer is yes. And if, let's say, a person referring doesn't have a .edu email address, would that disqualify them with the chances of being considered for Cosmos?
Send a note to the Cosmos team, because I think they asked, when I tried to create a recommendation for myself, it did not let me take my Gmail address. So you can send a note and ask them for an exception.
That's a good suggestion. Thank you. And then rest of the questions are flowing in for everyone here. I think Harpal, you're already answering those. Thank you.
What sort of plagiarism checks do they have? I would say, would that be, that's like repeating a previous essay. Okay, I think I answered this.
AP scores are not considered. They only look for classroom, not AP tests.
And based on the questions, I think some of the students are worried about a B in a PE or some irrelevant subjects. I think it goes back to Harpal and Anu maybe reiterating that they look for overall GPA and a specific cluster they're applying and relevant subjects grades, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Just apply. Don't overthink the matter, is all I'm saying. Don't keep applying again year after year. Your supplemental essay, which says why you're applying again this year, will have a lot of impact. Professors are very emotional. They are passionate thinkers, so think like them.
I'm in 11th grade and I have not done any research program before. Is it worth applying?
Yes, 100%. If you're not, then you should apply for not just this, but 4 other research programs, especially if you're applying to engineering or pre-med track. You should be meeting with us and we should be discussing this. I mean, a reference has become like a 4th R. You are reading, writing, arithmetic, and then you have research, which is the 4th R, and then you have computer science, which is the 5th R of college applications. So if you don't have those two, organized research and CS skills, you will be considered handicapped by applications.
Harpal, this is an interesting question, which we do drive home the point on. What is a brag sheet?
A brag sheet is a reminder to the teachers of what you did well, what you found exciting in the class, and why you considered them to be the right person to write for you. It's just an honest way to make it easier for the teacher to do a good job of writing a recommendation. Think of it, teachers are not paid to write recommendations, but you're making their life easier and that'll impact your application. Okay, let's take 2 more minutes and we'll get done, but go ahead, any more questions?
Harpal, is it okay to link, like say, an art portfolio or any kind of research?
They will not. No links are accepted. No, don't give any link to anybody. I mean, you
Okay.
can put it in, but don't expect them to open it because schools in general are notorious about not going to links.
Okay.
Okay, ask 2 questions.
So,
Hi, Vijay.
hi, so just a question. Is it possible to apply for a course which has prerequisites which haven't happened yet? Is there can you get waivers for those?
If there is a prerequisite, by the time you attempt the cluster,
Mhm.
as long as you're done with the prereq, you're good.
Right. No, if you have not, but you have do they give any exceptions for it?
No, not at all.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
I saw one question which I want to answer. Should I waive my rights to see the recommendation? Yes.
Yes.
Do not. Yeah, a recommendation which you can see is worthless. Don't do that. Okay, questions?
Someone wants to go into aviation field, so they're asking for a suggestion on what cluster would you recommend for them to consider applying?
LA had some, Davis had some. There are 2 of them which have some very good for aviation space. So reach out to us or just look up the clusters, and then if you have any questions, reach out back to us. What else?
Harpal, if a student has taken courses outside of high school, should those be included?
So they let you put a PDF file for the transcript. So what you can do is, and I have thought about this too, which is create a combined PDF of, like 2-3 transcripts and send that together to them, because they just, like if you look at the Cosmos app, it's just asking for per middle school 1 PDF, high school 1 PDF. So make 2-3 into 1 and send it out.
Understood. Thanks.
Harpal, just one more question. So, because computer science is such a competitive cluster, right? Is there any particular kind of campus or cluster that you would recommend?
I like the UCLA ones. They were very thoughtful. They were unique. They were new. For CS in general, it's a crapshoot. If it's purely a CS and no prerequisites, you'll see like a 5%, 4% acceptance rate. So at least make that cluster second choice, not make it your first choice. First choice should be a bullseye, which you think you are more uniquely qualified.
Okay, but it should be closely related to a computer science program, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and so UC Davis would also be, I mean, I know that's also one of the competitive.
It is. Once you set up some time with me, we can talk more details about that.
Okay, so how do I reach you? Just
go to the
email?
Success Coach website. So I put the link to the blog site. On the website, there's a click which says schedule some time with Harpal.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.